Okay, go ahead, Timothy.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming along today. It's refreshing that you have come in. It's refreshing the document you have provided us with. Very forthright, very proud of the stance that you take, and very much, from the get-go, we define women as adult human females. It's refreshing to hear that in this committee. There's a number of times where I've either asked a minister or some of the officials to define a woman, and they must still be looking for that definition. So they do. So it's very refreshing, and thank you very much for coming and putting yourself out of the comfort zone to come here today. So reading down through some of your submissions, taking this out. So Section 75 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998 states that there must be due regard to the need to promote equality of opportunity between men and women generally, which refers to biological sex. Would you believe that you're the first group that's come that has pointed that out, as that's within law, and this is the last day of gaps in equality legislation? And certainly a note earlier on in the week that Equality Commission now only recognises two genders, and it's good to hear that that's where
we prefer. I'm not being pernickety here, but sex.
Yes.
Gender is now a confusing term where people don't really understand that it's how you present yourself rather than your actual sex.
Mm-hmm. That leads me on to the next point. So your group would be very keen that in law is defined as sex.
Yes.
There's no mention to gender because it's confusion. Whereas
Yes.
sex is biological sex from birth.
Yes.
You are very forthright in that. One of your recommendations: any single piece of equality legislation should clearly define women and girls and retain biological sex as a protected characteristic. I suppose I want to come on to this document, and this is one of the flagships of the executive, ending violence against women and girls. Were you ever consulted, or were you ever asked to take part in the consultation of that? Because one of the one of the queries I had from the co-design partners, when I can't remember if it was the minister was here or the officials, was asking them, was there any gender critics that were asked to get involved? Is this your first time coming to give evidence?
Yes.
And for me, that's a breakthrough moment now that you have come, and certainly when it comes to documents like this in future, that Women's Rights Network would be one of the ones that would be for.
Sometimes hard enough to get your local councillor or MLA to speak to you, never mind anybody else beyond that.
So, to be charitable to those that hold a different view, why does gender or sex, why does that create such a hostile environment? I know in this committee in the past, when I've raised it, there is only two sexes. It's faced quite a bit of criticism. Why are there those in public life that are hostile to that?
I find because once you scrape the surface, there is no actual factor or reality to it. It's pretty much it's somebody's wish to be, but it's not their reality, and it's not our reality. I mean, I have no objection to somebody defining themselves and any, they could define themselves as a horse and I wouldn't care. But I'm not going to feed them hay and put a saddle on them and ride them around a field. And the same, if a man tells me he's a woman, I'm happy enough to I mean, I don't object to him having the same rights as everyone else, his housing, his employment rights. He shouldn't be sacked because he's transgender. He shouldn't lose his house because he's transgender. He shouldn't lose anything because he's transgender. But he shouldn't be compelling me to use the words to define him that are not factual and that go against what I see in front of me.
And going on to the chair's point, and just bringing out them facts, male violence against women and girls and data recording. Recent figures published in the UK show that more than 70% of men who identify as women in British prisons have been convicted of violent sexual crimes, and research has shown that males who identify as women are 18 times more likely to be convicted of a violent offence than female comparators. Time and time again we have been told that a man pretending to be a woman poses no risk to society, poses no risk to other women. Obviously, the stats don't support that claim, and very much your group is of the opinion.
Yeah, and going back to your previous question, this ties in with this. When we're told, when a man presents to us as a woman and demands that we call him a woman, and demands that we treat him as a woman, we're naturally honed to seek out who's male and who's female surrounding us. It's a leftover from our evolution. But when you see the statistics on male violence against women and girls, you can see why we need to know who in our surroundings is male or female. And when you squash that instinct in women, you're taking away a defence mechanism. You're telling them, you must call this man a woman. So the next man you see, that man might not have been dangerous, but the next man you see, you have to treat as a woman. You're squashing that instinct to get away from maybe a situation that you would normally not place yourself in because it was a man there rather than another woman. So linking that back to your statistics, the statistics show they are actually more inclined to be sexually violent. So therefore, we're quashing a legitimate fear. We're being asked to quash a legitimate fear within us.
Page 7. So under UK law, females cannot commit the act of rape. Moving on, very important to highlight that. Page 8. The Northern Ireland Prison Service Rules X91 state, women prisoners shall be held in separate accommodation. Does our Minister of Justice know that? Because the last time she was in front of the House, it was always, this is a case-by-case basis. So are you telling me that's in law? That's in page 8?
It's actually, I think, in the Geneva Convention, that women shall not be housed with men. If women in a war can be housed and separately from men, I don't know, I can't understand how we in peacetime cannot manage to do that.
So on that basis, what's your thoughts on this case-by-case basis then for trans women and female prisons?
I think it needs to be addressed in the law, in the legislation, so it's good that this committee is looking at it. We welcome that.
Yep. Regarding Ards and North Down Council, what would your thoughts be and your advice to them? Obviously, they have hit the media, and rightly so, after issuing guidance to 3 of its leisure centres, which welcomes transgender people to use whichever toilet and changing facility they identify with. So no recognition card is required or will be requested. In reality, this removes male and female toilet and changing facilities and creates 2 mixed sex changing facilities. It is naively or willful ignorance to believe that this could not result in abuse and is a risk to women and girls using those facilities, many of whom may not be aware of the admittance guidance. So that's the Northern Ireland Council has taken that decision. That's certainly something very, very concerning for myself. So what would your message to them be today?
Again, mixed sex spaces increase the risk of sexual violence towards women, whether that be upskirting. And I mean, you can say you're in a locked cubicle, but if the rest of the changing rooms empty and you're alone in a cubicle and you go to leave it and some man pushes his way in, I mean, you've no escape, and you can't not stop maybe a man coming into an empty changing room anyway. But we have those spaces so that those men who do try to enter those spaces stand out and can be approached and stopped. If it's all mixed sex spaces, it increases the risks to women. And I think if we're going to discuss male violence against women and girls, we have to take that into consideration. And the statistics are there that mixed sex spaces where women are vulnerable are more dangerous for women.
And just can I add something?
Yeah.
I suppose that's why we particularly have included our wish for that the Assembly and the Executive would make provision to inform service providers, not just private commercial organisations, but also government departments, that there's no such thing as self-ID in Northern Ireland. that the way several organisations, public sector and private sector, have gone ahead, implemented self-ID into what was previously female spaces without any consultation, it's just completely inappropriate.
Yep, and just to finish off my last question, so going back to the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls document, obviously something very serious and a problem in Northern Ireland. Do you believe for something like this to be successful, the executive needs to work out and define what a woman is to be able to enforce their policy and have this a success?
Yes.
Yes, that's our biggest ask, is that where any legislation is being drafted, it refers to male and female, man and woman, based on a biological reality and not an acquired gender or a self-ID approach.
Thank you very much. Thank
Okay.
you, Chair.
Thank you. Carol, please.
So I agree on your